Welcome to Imperfect Momming. Our children are constantly looking to us for examples. The term role model doesn't quite cut it here. We are shaping their worldview with every move we make. You see, it's not in the lectures we give or moments where we are actively attempting to teach them. It's in the micro movements we make, the unconscious ways in which we navigate life. We are constantly teaching our children how to show up for themselves, their friends, their future partners, and even their future children. So what can we do to ensure we are raising thoughtful, compassionate, self-aware human beings? We have to become them ourselves. No one is perfect, but we can still all be better, and it starts with self-healing. Let's get to it. Welcome back to Imperfect Momming, and we have a very special guest today. Her name is Ginger, and I don't know how to pronounce her last name, and I forgot to ask before we hit record.
It's just Baerg. The A's there for looks is what I tell people.
The A's there for looks. Love it. I could have guessed, but I didn't. I usually butcher names.
As long as you don't call me Barge, I'm pretty much okay with anything else.
I got it. Yeah, one of our guests, her last name was Kibler, and I was like, oh, like Gibbler, and she goes, just don't call me that. And I was like, I won't. And I think it still sounded like that, but G and K don't sound too far apart. So anyway, tell our listeners a little bit about who you are and what brought you here today.
For sure. So I'm Ginger, and relationships and service are really important to me, which is why my job is a high school math teacher, but I'm also an adoptive parent, and we've done foster care in the past. That's actually how we've adopted our kiddos. And so just almost everything in my life kind of revolves around building relationships and kind of being of service of others and just community. So those are the things I'm passionate about.
Yeah. And how many kids do you have?
We have 5 kids total. We have 3 biological and 2 adopted. And we're actually, in less than a month, bringing in an exchange student. So we're going to switch things up a little bit, try something new, share our family with some more people.
Yeah, that sounds really fun. I like that idea more than I like the idea of fostering, not because it's not something that is necessary in our world. It's just for me and my capabilities. I was in the grocery store the other day with my boyfriend, and we've been kind of floating the idea of homeschooling. And my son kind of brought it up, and I don't like to just shut down the ideas. I don't, even though a year and a half ago it would have been absolutely shut down.
Yeah.
But so I've been thinking about it because we've been doing it for the last year and a half, right? You've been teaching online, I would imagine.
So we were hybrid, but yeah, it depended on where you were in the country. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. In where we're at in California, we were a little bit of hybrid, a little bit of all social distancing, or, social distance learning, whatever they called it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like a lot more work on parents is what I called it. But I was, I've been discussing it, and my boyfriend's like, you can't, you won't be able to handle it. Like, you can't handle it. You can't handle it. And I said, but I want to be the kind of person that can.
I agree. So sometimes people ask me, because I'm a teacher, they're like, oh, do you homeschool your kids? Which, first of all, that doesn't make sense because I teach during the day. So when would I homeschool them? But second, right. I'm like, nope, that's not good. Like, teaching your own kids is a totally different thing. Although my son is in high school next year, so he's going to be in my math class. So I'm going to experience that. But I feel like it's different because it's not just one-on-one.
Right.
Like, I don't know.
There's structure.
It's like my domain.
Right. There's structure, there's rules, there's boundaries.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's different. Yeah. I remember my mom's also a teacher. Everyone in my family is a teacher. I'm a coach, so I can call myself a teacher if I want. But really, I'm a coach. My dad also was a pastor, so he taught the Bible. So everybody's a teacher.
Yeah.
But I was at my mom's school from fifth and sixth grade, and I was in her best friend's classroom. But every once in a while, she would come into my classroom, or I would go into hers, and but there's boundaries there that
Mm-hmm.
we don't call you mom, we call you Mrs. your last name, like
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
that's what we so things like that. So tell me a little bit about your personal development journey and how you got involved in that, and how it's made you a better parent.
Yeah. So, I mean, I feel like marriage showed me a lot of my flaws that I didn't know I had. I didn't realize I was an angry person until someone was there all the time and there was no break. And I mean, obviously there's work, but like it's just different. And
Different.
so I had to learn, how do I communicate instead of just blowing up. And then when you have kids, that kind of just ups the ante as far as, okay, so now we're not just navigating each other, we now have to work together to raise children. And then when we started fostering, I mean, that's just super next level, because all of a sudden people are coming in your house all the time. They're asking really personal questions. They're, good or bad, they're judging you in certain ways, not like they're being judgy, but they have to judge and make sure, what you're doing safe. And there's a lot of behaviors that come with some of the kiddos that we had that made parenting even more difficult. And so my husband and I have really had to work on our communication, and I've really had to look at myself and my own, what are my triggers and what am I doing to not just blow up about them? How am I kind of managing them and communicating to people? I mean, like, hey, that's something that really upsets me, but not just screaming, which I still fail sometimes, where I just am like, and I get to be crazy mom. But and then our oldest daughter that we adopted, she was older when we adopted her, and she brought a lot of traumatic experiences, and she has had a lot of violent outbursts, and that has obviously affected just our family dynamics some. And I've had to learn how to recover and forgive and heal and kind of move forward, despite some of that trauma that she's kind of brought into our lives.
Absolutely. So what was I know you said I got married and I became an angry person.
I didn't become an angry person, I already was. I
Realize
just didn't
you
know
were an angry person.
it.
I'm sitting here watching my dog destroy my curtains, so we're gonna not let that happen. Hey. And my son does not like me to yell at the dog. And I mean, I resonate with that, the realizing you're an angry person. And it's interesting how, as a single person, we have different coping mechanisms that can get taken away from us when we're married. And I think in Sex and the City, she talks about my secret single behavior. And it's similar to that but it's coping, essentially. Right. And then there's another person who's with you 24/7 outside of sleeping, and well, you're probably sleeping next to each other, but not conscious anyway.
Right. Yeah.
But your conscious
my dreams.
Yeah, your conscious time, you're together all the time, except for when you're at work, and that's a new dynamic. So where did you go for help?
So my husband's amazing. I mean, he's not perfect by any means, but amazing. And I would communicate, like, I just need like time alone. So we had to really figure out, and I don't know, not really schedule, but like when I would start to feel myself get escalated, try to find times for me to have some time alone, or, just have some time away. And as a mom, I'm really glad we figured that out early in marriage, because as a mom, I still need that. And he's very supportive of being like, hey, mom's going to take a bath. She might be in there an hour. Just leave her alone. Like, like he helps protect that time that I need by myself. And so my dad is actually a counselor. And so early in our marriage, we both took I don't know, there was some sort of a test we took. It wasn't Myers-Briggs, I can't remember what it's called, but it was funny because he sat us down and he just told us, these are the things you guys fight about. And we didn't even say anything. We're like, yes, yes, what? And he's like, because these are the things, your personalities, when you put these two personalities together, they're going to fight about. So let's talk about strategies. So for instance, I'm a very controlling person, and my husband hates to feel like he's being controlled. So if he even thinks I'm trying to control him, he's going to do the opposite. And so that's one thing we've had to learn to communicate with. And sometimes when I'll feel him bristle, I have to be like, I swear I'm not trying to control you right now. I'm literally trying to talk to you. And I've had to start doing that. And, same thing, vice versa.
Yeah. That's really cool that you had that. And I really think that, I had marriage counseling before getting married, and it was pastoral counseling. And I just remember the energy of being in that room was, why are we here? Mm-hmm. From both me, but more so my partner. And after I divorced him, we fought a lot about money. That wasn't our biggest problem, but we fought a lot about money. And I was doing a lot of research about divorce and different things back then, just to really understand what was going on and trying to identify my feelings, because I was so disconnected from myself at that point that I didn't know that's what I was trying to do, but that's what I was doing. And I just remember thinking, if 90% of marriages end because of money issues, which I think was the statistic at the time, I'm like, why don't we have financial planning instead of, pastoral counseling before getting married? Now that I've experienced divorce twice and have experienced a healthy relationship, and what you just said sounds fantastic, like that should be what we do, and before we get married, because what if that's like having a crystal ball of what your biggest struggle is going to be in your relationship?
Mm-hmm. Because what was really amazing was he talked to us each individually about these are things that your personality is going to have to overcome, like your strengths and weaknesses. But then it was also us as a couple to be like, oh yeah, we do fight about that. Right. Yep, that's true.
Yeah. I think I know which test you're talking about. It's like a number scale, 1 through 9 or something. I cannot for the life of me remember what it's called, but I
remember there was four there's 4 categories, mm-hmm. and sometimes you had the same one in all 4 categories, and sometimes it was different. Okay. So I'm control in 2 of them, but that's not what it's called, but that's what it is. But then in the other 2 it wasn't. So it was kind of interesting. But I know it wasn't Myers-Briggs. I'll have to ask my dad, because now I'm curious. I can't remember what it's called, but it was very informative.
We'll have to put it in the show notes, because we won't remember or know. So that's, I don't have anything, my brain just went blank, but okay. So now you're fostering. So you had children, yes. Your spouse is helping, which is amazing, and kudos to him. And of course he's not perfect. None of them are. We're perfect. Right.
Neither am I.
I'm just kidding. No, nobody's perfect. We all have things that we need to work on. And but from things that I see moms struggling with online, is there's a lot of men out there that don't pull their weight in any way, shape, or form, beyond maybe financially. And it's not enough anymore. I don't know that it ever was enough. We need time, we need space, we need alone time, we are humans first, and we forget that once we have babies from our body or otherwise, and our lives become all about our babies, and we forget about who we are a lot of the time. So kudos to your man.
Yes, he's pretty amazing.
Yeah. So you adopted and you had some trauma. Was there a and she had some trauma. Was there something
Mhm.
that you did to kind of help with processing that?
Yeah, so she came to live with us. I think it took almost 2 years from when she came to live with us, even though we knew we were going to adopt her, before we finally, with all the paperwork and everything like that. And she was in therapy from like day one because we knew what she had gone through. And after about, I think, 2 months, I told my husband, I was like, I need therapy too. Like, this is too much for me. And my husband always listens to me, but I also don't want him to have to be my therapist. Like, I don't want him to have to be the one, because I think a lot of times he's like, I want to fix it because he loves me and he wants to fix it, but there is no fix. I mean, there's no fix. If there was, we would be doing that. And so that really helped me. And so at the beginning, I was going, I think, every week for a few months, and then I did every other week. And as we kind of were making progress and identifying some thought patterns that I needed to change in order to be able to handle, like, I had to stop obsessing about everyone seeing me as a good mom, because some of the behaviors, when people don't know the situation, it makes you look like you're a bad mom, or you don't have control of your kids, or, like, why can't she get her kids to mind? And if they don't know the situation, they don't know, like, this poor little girl has been so abused and I've only had her for a month. Like, she's gonna do stuff that's embarrassing. And so, my therapist was like, if anyone says anything to you, you can say, feel free to live in my house and raise my kids and see how it goes. Otherwise, you need to stop. And that was very empowering, I think. Like, like, I reflect and I pray and I'm like, okay, God, if there's something I'm doing wrong, I want you to tell me, but I have to quit obsessing about what other people might think I am or am not doing, if it's true or not. Like, I know the truth. My husband, my family knows the truth, and I need to quit worrying about strangers and what they think about me. And I'm so glad that I did that, because, a few years later, a situation happened and I had to call the police. And I've never had the police at my house my entire life growing up, ever, like, and it was so just humbling and it was embarrassing. And I think if I hadn't already come to grips with, like, all of that other stuff earlier, I don't know if I don't know how I would have handled it, how I would have gotten through that. So,
Yeah. And I mean, I will be asking you later for a piece of advice for moms, but I think that's a really good piece of advice for moms, is really just understand that nobody knows what you're going through, and their judgment is none of your business. It's,
mm-hmm.
And if you're judging other moms, it's also none of your business.
Right. And I've had to check myself some since then, because I think we all have that time where we see something. And I mean, there's obviously things that are bad and hurtful, and that, it's like, no, that's bad and hurtful. But then it's just the perspective. Like, we don't really know what led up to that. Like, we don't really know why the mom seems overly strict, but we don't know, is there a history of something here?
Mm-hmm.
Is there, you know what I mean? Like, we really don't know. And so it's hard to, I don't know, I try to give other moms a lot more grace and support. And if I see they're struggling, like, instead of looking at them judgy, is there something I can do to actually help them? Is there a way I can support them?
Right. Yeah, I remember there was a video around the time that my son was going through the testing to see if he was on the spectrum, and he had services that we were going through, and there was a video that of a kid having a meltdown. From my perspective, it looked like the kid was having a meltdown, and the caption on the video was, this is why you don't spoil your kids. And I was so enraged by reading that caption, because it was like, you have no idea, number one, what that woman's going through. Number two, that's not what it looks like to spoil your kid. You don't get to see the spoiled kids.
Right.
Because mom said yes all the time. Or parents, they're spoiled. They don't hear no. And I
Mm-hmm.
feel like there's times in my son's life where he's spent time with people that don't know the word no. And so he'll spend a week with the said people. And
Mm-hmm.
there have been times when he's come home and I will say no to everything just to acclimate him to hearing no. And
Because it's been crazy.
because it's been a week that he hasn't heard it. And at the time I didn't know that that's a little bit of his love language is to be given gifts. And um when he came home this one time and I was saying no to everything, like he was so desperate to hear yes
Mm-hmm.
that he asked me to buy him a sponge. We were at Ace Hardware and he asked me to buy him a sponge. And I said no. And if you ask me for anything else, I'm going to throw all of your toys away. Because I was,
We've all had those days. Yes.
right? And this guy in line, so men do it too, but this guy in line in front of me turns around and he looks at me and he goes, "Really?" And the judgment in the tone and the look and the fact that he's butting in anyway, like, and who I am now would have had a different response, but who I was then didn't have any response because I never stood up to myself and for myself, and so my boyfriend took care of it for me. But it was like it was just I think that's the one time that I actually in public, like face to face, had felt that kind of judgment from a stranger, you
Mm-hmm.
know. And it's just like you really don't know.
Mm-hmm.
You don't
Right.
know what I'm doing. You don't know my kid. You don't know what's been going
Mm-hmm.
on. Like you don't know,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and we all have our limits.
Exactly. Exactly. And like, yeah, and they don't know what the last 2, 3 hours look like. Like they see
Right.
a snippet. And so it's really easy to pick apart the snippet when you don't see
Mhm.
anything else.
Yeah. There's always context. There's always context for
Mm-hmm.
everything. And the context may be that this is how this person acts all the time, but
Right.
usually it's really like a blink in that person's day that they just lost it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it takes knowing someone for a long time to really even be able to be like, okay, no, that's just how they are.
Yeah.
And then you can decide what to do with it at that point.
Right. So is there a piece of advice besides what we've just been talking about that you want to share with moms?
And I know not everyone has a healthy marriage or a healthy partner, but if you do, I think really just communicating your needs to them or just communicating before you blow up, that's something I had to learn. I just kind of expected him to be able to tell I was getting frustrated. Like, how can you not tell I'm getting frustrated? Like, I always tease him, like, I'm part Serbian. We are very emotional. Like, you should know I'm getting mad. But I had to start being like, I'm getting frustrated with you.
Yeah.
And then he had a chance to fix it before I exploded, or maybe I was way off base and he could be like, I think that maybe you're reading this wrong, or like, because then we could communicate before I lost it. So that would be my other thing. And that's not doesn't have to be even with a spouse. It can be with a coworker. I mean, anytime when you feel yourself getting frustrated, just being open and, I don't know, expressing how you're feeling.
I think women have do struggle with using their voice and expressing themselves before the fact.
Mm-hmm.
And then after, like, the explosion is involuntary
Right.
most
You
of
get
the
to a
time.
point where it's just happening.
Right. But to recognize I'm boiling right now, and what you're doing is creating this feeling inside of me, and I need you to stop or change or explain or something
Right.
so that I don't explode.
Mm-hmm.
And it takes some time to it takes a couple of explosions usually to know, okay, this isn't how I want to respond. This is
Right.
how I'm feeling beforehand. This is when, and for me, it's taken practice. I come from like yell first, ask questions later. And there's still times where that's my default. And it's interesting to me when that shows up. I love when the dog's playing with the loudest toy that he has, and he's been sleeping the rest of the day. I haven't
Oh,
heard
of course.
from him.
And now it's like squeak, squeak.
Squeak, 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 squeak. I've been muting myself while you're talking, but I can't do that while I'm talking. But my son, this is also why I shouldn't be a homeschool teacher, which we've come full circle now. He's been invited to a birthday party this Saturday, and it's at a roller skating rink, which I thought those went the way of the dinosaur, but
There's a few left, yeah.
there's still one in my town. So a friend of his is having a birthday party there, and he's talked about wanting to learn how to skate quite a lot. And I knew I did not want to teach him because it's really difficult for me to teach him things without getting frustrated. And it's more the attitude it's the defeatist attitude that he immediately goes into when he's not good at something the first time he tries it. And it's a gross misunderstanding of the process of learning new things. And I think it stems from he's good at a lot of stuff, and the stuff that he wasn't good at, he doesn't remember not being good at it. And I don't know. So I yelled at him yesterday. I felt really bad. We had a discussion afterwards. It's like, and then we watched a YouTube video. Like, okay, I don't know how to teach you how to roller skate. I think I was 4 when I learned, it's like, I don't remember at all. I don't think I've skated in 20 years either.
Yeah. Well, didn't you say that? Because I had to tell my husband yesterday, in the morning before church, I blew up at my son because it was just one of those like consistent, like not really listening, nothing huge, but like by like the 4th or 5th time, I just like exploded. And then I had to be like, sorry, bud, you need to listen. I need to not do that. And so I get it. Sometimes
it just happens.
And I'm a firm believer of when I mess up, I do exactly what I expect my kids to. I tell them I'm sorry, because if I want them to do that, I need to model it. And so I've gotten a lot better at that especially as my kids get older and I have really no idea what I'm doing. I have to apologize a lot more.
Well, and I applaud you for taking the time to figure out what your triggers are and to, do your best to de-trigger them or avoid them or, take care of yourself, because it sounds like you practice some pretty good self-care in that you're expressing your needs and taking time for yourself and all of these things. And like, that's step 1. Right?
Yeah. In fact, sometimes I think when I'm really stressed, I know it because I just want to isolate it in my room. And so I have to be like, okay, I need to balance taking care of myself, but also being present with my children. Because, it's kind of like a pendulum. I tend to like be like super mom or whatever. And then it's like, now for a week, I don't want to see my people. And so I need to do a little bit better about finding that balance of not doing like, 3 hours of alone time necessarily all in a row where my kids are just in charge of themselves. I mean, they're old enough now, but just being present.
Yeah. And the awareness of that is, also important, because without the awareness, we're just flying blind and repeating old patterns and continuing to let the pendulum swing instead of,
right.
Yeah. Is there a book that was particularly impactful for you?
So many kids books. There was one book, why can't I think of what it's called? It was something about parenting kids from trauma, but that's not the title. And that's been really helpful with my oldest adopted daughter with just kind of being able to handle those behaviors. But then, yeah, it's just been a lot of, I don't know, blogs, podcasts, research, it's been a lot of little things just kind of adding up. And then of course, just my own personal therapy and just kind of what that's revealed as well.
Yeah.
I can't think of any one specific thing that was totally like mind blowing besides like I said, when my dad did that and then told us like, hey, this is what you're gonna fight about. This is what you need to do to fix it. It was like, oh, okay. That was really good.
Yeah, definitely look that up so you can send it to me and then I'll put it in the show notes because I'm curious now too. And it's so funny because I don't really like taking personality tests because I always feel like I'm in between. Like they'll give you 4 choices and I'm like, well, I mean, it could be this one or that one. And I don't know if that's because I was always like wondering what's the right answer. Because like this one sounds right, but so does this one, and I was very much that way for a long time in my life. But I'm starting to enjoy quizzes a little bit more now that I'm really understanding who I am a lot more.
Yeah, and I'm more likely to be honest. Like, do you tend to lose your temper? It used to be like, oh, I don't want to say I'm losing my temper, but now it's like, yeah, sometimes I do. Like, might as well fess up.
Right. Yeah, there's a little bit of that too. So the one that I'm referring to, I'll probably put that in the show notes if it's not the same one, but there's numbers on a scale. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And you could be, or maybe it stops at 8, but you could be any of those numbers. And then each of those numbers has like a list of traits. And then, there is a test that you can take to find out how your number and your spouse's number commingle. And I first heard about it from Rachel Hollis on her podcast with her husband before they split up. And yeah, so there was, it was a lot like what you're describing where it's like, well, this is what you guys are going to have conflict about. So yeah, I don't remember what it's called. I just looked it up the other day too. I feel like it starts with a P. Anyway, so if our listeners have resonated with you, where can they find you?
So I actually have a website that's tied to the children's book I wrote. So it's just my patchwork family book at gmail.com. So if they email me there, I love talking to people, especially if it's someone who's thinking about foster care or is in foster care. I love supporting other people. And sometimes it's nice to talk to someone that doesn't necessarily know you. So you can just be honest and you're not worried about judgment or gossip or, sometimes some of those things that happen when you try to be raw with people. So yeah.
Yeah.
I love hearing from people.
And then tell them a little bit about your book.
Sure. So as we were fostering and adopting, I was looking for books about foster care and adoption. I was having a hard time finding ones that were specific about that. And so I ended up writing a story, and it's told from my oldest biological son's perspective. And it's just a children's book that just kind of talks about our family and how we were like sewn together like patches in a patchwork quilt, and we come from different places, but together we make a beautiful quilt. And so I just published it myself, like I think it was the end of December is when I finally got my books. And so it's been very interesting and fun. And I had to really come to terms with putting my story out there. I had it written for a while before I decided to publish it, but as soon as you put something out there to the public, it opens you up to judgment. And so I had to really come to the place where I was like, okay, I'm going to share our story, and come what may, it's out there now and I can't take it back. And so people now can kind of have their opinion on my family. So
right. Yeah, and there's and it boils back down to they don't know everything. They don't know you or your heart or where you're coming from or what was going on with your kids or anything like that. So hopefully your heart is protected and that people are kind.
So far I've only had one really ugly comment made, and they said that adopting out of foster care is like buying children. And I didn't even respond because I didn't even really know how to. And then I was like, that's so sad. I wonder if they had an experience as a child, or, like, there has to be something there, but I didn't respond because I was like, I don't feel like there's anything I can say to that person. So far, that's actually been the only thing where I was like, oh, that was kind of hurtful and ugly.
And that's such a unique individual opinion. Like, I've never heard that opinion. I've heard that opinion more about like surrogacy, but not from fostering. Like, it makes sense to me, makes a little more sense. And I'm not saying that that's what's happening. But it makes more sense that thought process would be attached to surrogacy, way more than fostering, except
it was an interesting perspective.
There's like, I know that there's a financial component to fostering, and maybe that's what they were referring to, but I'm sure, most people, hopefully most people who have good hearts and are fostering are not, doing it to get rich, because I'm sure there's other ways to make.
I don't know how you can even get rich fostering, because if you're providing their needs, the money barely covers it, if it even covers it, which is, so that's why I'm like, what, if you're making money off of it, you've got to be like feeding them ramen every meal, or, making them wear nothing but Goodwill clothes, nothing, like, I don't even know how you could do that, to be honest.
And I think in California, you actually have to provide receipts for the clothes that you buy that are brand new and not from Goodwill. And I object to that, because there is perfectly good clothing in Goodwill, and it's like $200 a month or something for brand new clothing. That I just think that there's other ways to spend that money. You could buy more food, or you could take them and do more experiences. And clothing is brand new clothes for a child. Like, I mean, and I practice what I preach. My son has had like 5 brand new shirts.
I was gonna say, I love hand-me-downs. I'm really sad when like my kids get to a point and I'm like, oh, I don't have anybody to get hand-me-downs from anymore. But it sounds like California might do it slightly different, because we didn't get like a closed budget. I mean, I know that you could apply for that, but it was like a separate thing, and we just never did all of that paperwork. We just took the stipend and was like, that just goes in our budget, and then we get what we need to get. We get, we buy. We never had separate food, or like, it was always our family. So if we go on vacation, you go on vacation. We're eating burgers, you're eating burgers. Like, it's all the same. So
for sure. Well, thank you again for coming and sharing your story and pouring into our listeners. And I remember now when we talked originally about you coming on the podcast, and you told me about your book, and I just thought it was so cute that the quilt and coming together and creating a beautiful blanket. So I thought that was a beautiful idea.
Thank you.
And Xander wants to come and say hi. So
hi.
All right, he's got his skates on, because he's ready.
Nice.
To learn.
Got this.
He's getting comfortable on the carpet. And
I need to watch a video on how to go fast with these.
Well, let's figure out how to go not falling first, and then we can figure out how to go fast.
I just went twice without having a trip in the kitchen.
Good job.
Sweet. All right. Well, we will have another episode of Imperfect Momming back next week. And until then, keep healing. Thank you for tuning in to Imperfect Momming. It's time for us to step up and realize that our power is not in trying to shape our children. Our power lies in shaping ourselves into the people we want our children to model themselves after. Don't just do it for your kids. Do it for yourself. When you become a more self-aware, compassionate, and confident person, you and everyone around you benefit. For more information about me and my work, visit alicialyons.com. That's ALYSIA lyons.com. See you next time.